The ship was falling. Yuna knew this because the walls screamed around her, metal twisting like paper in a storm. Red lights flashed everywhere. Alarms cried out in voices that hurt her ears. She tried to stand, but the floor was no longer the floor. Everything was spinning. "Yuna!" Taiho's voice cut through the noise. He grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the emergency pods. His face was covered in blood from a cut on his forehead, but his eyes were sharp and clear. "Get in, now!" She wanted to argue. She wanted to help, but Taiho was stronger, and he pushed her into the small pod with hands that would not take no for an answer. The last thing she saw was his face through the tiny window. He was smiling, even though the world was ending around them. Then everything went white. When Yuna opened her eyes again, she saw only snow. It fell thick and heavy from a gray sky she did not recognize. The cold bit into her skin like tiny teeth. Her emergency suit was damaged. She could feel the warmth leaving her body, slow but certain. She tried to move. Pain exploded in her chest. Broken ribs, she thought, maybe more. Her medical training told her many things in that moment, and none of them were good. She was hurt badly. She was alone. She was on a planet that was not meant for humans. The ship. Where was the ship? Yuna turned her head, and the movement cost her greatly. She saw pieces of the Hanul scattered across the white ground like the bones of some great metal beast. Fire still burned in some places, orange and angry against the endless snow. Bodies lay here and there. She could not tell who they were. She did not want to know. Her suit beeped weakly. Life support failing, temperature dropping. She had maybe an hour, maybe less. So this is how I die, she thought. Not in a hospital, not surrounded by family, but alone on a frozen world, far from Earth, far from home. She closed her eyes and let the snow cover her face, but death did not come. Instead, she heard sounds. Heavy footsteps in the snow, deep voices speaking words she did not understand. She forced her eyes open one more time. Shapes moved through the blizzard. They were big, much bigger than humans. They walked on two legs like people, but they had 4 arms and thick fur that was white as the snow around them. Their eyes were pale and strange, glowing softly in the dim light. The Valari. Yuna knew them from her training. A proud species, territorial, dangerous. They did not like outsiders. They especially did not like humans. One of them came close. It was massive, with scars across its face and hands that could crush her skull without effort. It looked down at her with those cold, pale eyes. It said something to the others. The words meant nothing to Yuna, but the tone was clear. This one was the leader. This one would decide if she lived or died. She tried to speak. She tried to say please, but no sound came from her frozen lips. The leader turned away. It seemed the decision was made. They would leave her here. They would let the cold finish what the crash had started. Yuna felt something inside her break, not her body this time, but something deeper. Hope, perhaps. Then a smaller shape pushed through the group. It was a child, a Valari cub, with fur that was more silver than white and eyes that were wide with curiosity. It could not have been more than 6 or 7 years old in human terms. It moved past the adults and stood over Yuna, looking at her like she was the most interesting thing it had ever seen. The leader spoke sharply. A command. Go back. Stay away. But the cub did not move. It crouched down in the snow and reached out one small hand. Its fingers touched Yuna's face, gentle and warm against her frozen skin. The adults argued. Yuna could hear anger in some voices, confusion in others. The leader spoke again, louder this time, but the cub stayed where it was. It would not leave. Finally, the leader let out a long, heavy breath. It said something to the others. The tone had changed. There was frustration there, but also something else. Something like acceptance. Strong hands lifted Yuna from the snow. The world tilted and spun. She saw the gray sky above her, then the white fur of the Valari who carried her. They moved fast, their big legs eating up the ground with ease. The cold began to fade. They were taking her somewhere warm. As her mind started to slip away again, Yuna looked for the cub. She found it walking beside her, keeping pace with the adults even though its legs were much shorter. It looked up at her and made a small sound. Not words, just a sound. But somehow Yuna understood. "You are safe now. I will not let them leave you." She did not know why this small creature had saved her. She did not know what would happen when she woke up. She did not know if Tejo was alive or if she would ever see home again. But in that moment, as the darkness took her, Yuna felt something she had not expected to feel. She felt grateful. The cub watched the strange creature's eyes close. It did not understand why it had fought so hard to save her. The adults said humans were weak. They said humans were not worth saving. But when the cub had looked into this human's eyes, it had seen something familiar. Loneliness. The same loneliness the cub felt every night since its mother died. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. The cub stayed close as they carried the human into the mountain, into the warmth, into the den. It would not leave her side, not now, not ever. It had waited so long for someone to come back to it. Now someone finally had. Days passed in darkness and fever. Yuna drifted between dreams and pain, never sure which was real. Sometimes she saw her mother's face, soft and kind, calling her home for dinner. Sometimes she saw the ship burning, falling from the sky like a dying star. Sometimes she saw nothing at all, just empty black that stretched on forever. But through it all, she felt warmth. It pressed against her side every night, small and soft. A heartbeat that was not her own, steady and calm against the chaos in her mind. In her worst moments, when the cold tried to take her back, that warmth kept her alive. It reminded her that she was not alone. The Valari den was deep inside the mountain. The walls were stone, smooth and ancient, carved by hands that lived long before humans ever looked at the stars. Fires burned in pits along the main hall, and families gathered around them, their fur catching the orange light. They watched Yuna with careful eyes. Some were curious. Most were not happy. Elder Kova stood apart from the others. He was old, his white fur turning gray in places, his body marked by many battles. He had led this pack for 30 winters. He had seen humans before, long ago when their ships first came to this world. He remembered how they took what they wanted without asking. He remembered how they called the Valari primitive. He did not trust this human, but he had allowed her to stay, not for her sake, for the cub. Rue had not left the human's side since they brought her in. The little one slept curled against her each night, the way Valari young sleep with their mothers. The healers said this was why the humans still lived. Valari bodies were warm, much warmer than human bodies. Rue had kept the stranger from freezing when nothing else could. Kova did not understand it. Rue had lost its mother in the great hunt last winter. The cub had been quiet ever since, eating little, speaking less. The elders worried it might fade away, the way some young ones do when grief becomes too heavy. But now Rue was different. There was light in its eyes again, purpose in its movements, all because of this broken human woman who might not even wake up. Kova did not understand it, but he could not deny it either. On the 7th day, Yuna opened her eyes. The world was blurry at first. She saw stone above her, dark and rough. She saw firelight dancing on the walls. She smelled something rich and strange, like earth and smoke and animal fur. Her body hurt everywhere, but the pain was distant now, like thunder far away. She turned her head. A face was inches from hers, small and furry, with silver-white fur and eyes that glowed like moons. The cub was staring at her with such hope, such joy, that Yuna's heart ached just to see it. "You're awake!" The words came out broken and rough, spoken in universal standard with an accent thick as honey. "I longed for you." Yuna's throat was dry. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Hello, little one." The cub made a sound that might have been laughter, might have been crying. It pressed its face against Yuna's shoulder and held on tight. She could feel its small body shaking. She lifted one weak hand and placed it on the cub's head, stroking the soft fur. "Thank you," she said. "You saved me." The cub looked up at her with wet eyes. "You came back. Others did not come back, but you did." Yuna did not fully understand what the cub meant, but she understood enough. This little one had lost someone. This little one had been waiting for someone to return, and somehow, impossibly, Yuna had become that someone. The elders came to see her that day. They stood around her bed and spoke in their own language. Kova translated, his voice flat and careful. "We do not usually help outsiders. You should know this." Yuna nodded slowly. "I understand. I am grateful." Kova studied her face. "Gratitude means little to us. Among our people, survival is earned, not given." "Then tell me how to earn it." The old Valari seemed surprised by this answer. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away without another word. The other Valari left too. But Rue stayed. Always Rue stayed. Days turned into weeks. Yuna grew stronger slowly. She learned to sit up, then to stand, then to walk, though it hurt and she often fell. Each time she fell, Rue was there to help her up. She began to learn the ways of the den. She learned that Valari hunted in groups, moving silent across the snow to bring down great beasts with many legs. She learned that they did not build machines or fly ships, but they knew the mountain like it was part of their own bodies. She learned that they thought humans were strange, weak, short-lived creatures who talked too much and died too easily. She also learned that Valari did not tell stories. This surprised her most of all. On Earth, humans had always told stories. Around fires, in books, in songs. Stories about heroes and monsters, about love and loss, about worlds that never were. Stories were how humans made sense of things. But the Valari had no such tradition. They spoke only of things that were real, things that happened. To speak of things that never were seemed pointless to them, a waste of breath. One night, Rue could not sleep. The cub tossed and turned, making small sounds of distress. Yuna pulled the little one close and did what felt natural. She told a story. It was an old Korean tale about a rabbit who lived on the moon. She spoke softly, her voice gentle in the dark. She told of how the rabbit came to live there, and what it did, and why children could still see its shape when they looked up at night. When she finished, Rue was still, but its eyes were wide open, shining in the firelight. "Again?" the cub whispered. "Tell me again." So Yuna did. The next night, other cubs crept close to listen, then adults, then elders. They did not understand why anyone would speak of things that never happened, but they listened anyway. There was something in Yuna's voice, something in the way she shaped the words, that made them want to hear more. Kova stood in the shadows, watching. He did not join the circle, but he did not leave either. Humans were strange creatures, he thought, weak and soft and short-lived. But perhaps there was something valuable in them after all. Something the Valari had forgotten how to be. The sickness came without warning. It started with the youngest cubs. A cough here, a fever there. The healers thought it was nothing at first. Cubs got sick sometimes. It was normal. They would get better. But they did not get better. Within 3 days, half the cubs in the den were lying on their beds, too weak to move. Their fur lost its shine. Their eyes grew dull. Some coughed blood onto the stone floors. The healers worked day and night, using every medicine they knew, every herb, every prayer. Nothing helped. Rue was one of the first to fall. Yuna found the cub shaking in its bed, fur wet with sweat, breath coming in short, painful gasps. She placed her hand on Rue's forehead. The heat was terrible, like touching a stone that had sat in fire. "Yuna," Rue whispered. "I feel cold. Why do I feel so cold?" Yuna's heart broke into 1,000 pieces. She pulled the cub close and held on tight, trying to share what warmth she had. But she knew it would not be enough. This was not something that warmth could fix. She found Elder Kova in the main hall. The old Valari looked tired, older than she had ever seen him. Around him, parents held their sick children and tried not to cry. The Valari were proud people. They did not show weakness. But this was too much, even for them. "What is this sickness?" Yuna asked. Kova shook his head slowly. "A parasite. It lives in the ice caves to the north. We thought it died out long ago. We were wrong." "Your medicines are not working." "No, they are not." Yuna thought of Rue lying in bed, coughing blood, asking why it felt cold. She thought of all the other cubs, all the other parents. She thought of her training, her years of study, everything she had learned about medicine before she came to the stars. "Take me to the ship," she said. "What is left of it?" Kova stared at her. "Why?" "Because I am a healer, and my medicines might work where yours do not." The old Velari was silent for a long moment. Yuna could see the war in his eyes, pride against need, distrust against hope. He had spent his whole life believing humans were weak and foolish. Asking them for help went against everything he knew, but his grandchildren were sick, and pride could not save them. "Very well," he said at last, "but if you fail, do not expect kindness." The walk to the crash site took half a day. Yuna's body screamed at her with every step. She was not fully healed. She should have been resting. But rest was a luxury she could not afford. Not now. Hana met them at the wreckage. The engineer had survived the crash too, found alive in a collapsed section of the ship 3 days after Yuna woke up. She was tough, practical, with short black hair and hands that knew machines better than people. She had been living in the wreckage, trying to repair the communication system, trying to call for help. "Yuna," Hana's eyes went wide. "You should not be walking. Your ribs are still—" "I know." Yuna cut her off. "I need the medical supplies. Everything we have left." Hana did not argue. She was smart enough to see the urgency in Yuna's eyes. Together they dug through the ruins of the Hanul, searching for anything useful. Most of the medical bay was destroyed, crushed, burned, buried under snow. But some things survived. Antibiotics, antivirals, equipment for testing and mixing compounds. It was not much, but it was something. Yuna set up a small workspace in what remained of the cargo hold. Her hands shook as she worked, partly from the cold, partly from exhaustion, partly from fear. She had never treated a Valari before. Their bodies were different from human bodies. What worked for one might not work for the other. But she had to try. She took samples from one of the sick cubs. She studied the parasite under a damaged microscope, squinting at the tiny shapes that moved in the blood. She mixed compounds, tested them, threw them away when they did not work. Hours passed, then more hours. The Valari watched her with eyes that held no hope. Kova stood nearby, arms crossed, face unreadable. "You are wasting your time," he said. "Human medicine cannot help us." Yuna did not look up from her work. "Watch me." Dawn came, then noon, then evening, Yuna had not slept in 2 days. Her vision blurred. Her hands felt clumsy and slow, but she kept working. She had to keep working. Finally, as the second night fell, she found it. The antibiotics alone would not kill the parasite. But mixed with a certain compound from a native plant, one the Valari used for cooking, it became something new, something that attacked the parasite's shell and broke it apart from the inside. She tested it on a sample of infected blood. Under the microscope, she watched the parasites die. Rue was the first patient. Yuna injected the medicine with hands that trembled badly. Then she sat beside the cub's bed and waited. She held Rue's small hand and watched the labored breathing. She prayed to every god she had ever heard of, and some she made up on the spot. Hours passed. Then Rue's fever broke. The cub's eyes fluttered open, clear for the first time in days. It looked up at Yuna and made a sound that was almost a laugh. "You saved me," Rue whispered. "Again." Yuna could not speak. She could only hold the cub close and cry silent tears into its silver fur. She treated the other cubs next. One by one, they recovered. By the 3rd day, the sickness was beaten. The den was filled with the sounds of children playing again, their laughter echoing off the stone walls. Kova came to Yuna on the 4th day. She was sitting alone outside the den, looking up at the unfamiliar stars. Her body was exhausted beyond words, but her heart was full. "Why?" The old Valari's voice was rough. "You owe us nothing. We thought about leaving you to die in the snow. Why did you save our children?" Yuna thought about the question for a long time. She thought about Rue's face when the cub first woke up. She thought about her mother back on Earth, who had always told her that kindness was never wasted. She thought about all the reasons she had become a healer in the first place. "Because they are children," she said finally. "That is the only reason I need." Kova was silent. He had no answer for this. The Valari believed in debts and balance. You helped those who helped you. You owed nothing to strangers. This human's way of thinking was completely foreign to him. But as he looked at the sleeping cubs, healthy and whole because of her, he could not call it wrong. "There is no word in our language," he said slowly, "for what you have done, for helping without expecting return." Yuna smiled, tired but warm. "Maybe it is time to make one." The elders gathered in the great hall, their faces dark with worry. Yuna had never seen them look so afraid. The Valari were brave people, strong people, who faced danger without flinching. But something had changed the air in the den. Something that made even the oldest warriors go quiet. Kova stood before the fire, his voice heavy as stone. "The White Death comes." A murmur ran through the crowd. Mothers pulled their children close. Hunters gripped their weapons. Yuna looked at Hana, confused, but the engineer had no answers either. "What is the White Death?" Yuna asked. An elder beside her spoke without looking away from Kova. "A storm. The greatest storm this world knows. It comes once every 30 winters. It buries everything. Mountains, valleys, dens. Those who do not move south will die." Kova raised his hand for silence. "We leave tomorrow. The southern caverns will shelter us until spring. Take only what you can carry. Say goodbye to this place. We will not see it again for many months." The meeting ended, and the den erupted into activity. Families packed their belongings. Hunters secured food for the long journey. Cubs said farewell to their favorite sleeping spots, their play corners, the marks they had made on the walls. But Yuna did not pack. She stood at the entrance of the den, looking out at the distant mountains to the north. The sky there was dark, darker than it should be, filled with clouds that swirled like angry spirits. The storm was coming. She could feel it in her bones, in the way the wind cut sharper than before. But she could feel something else, too. She walked to the cargo hold where Hana had been working. The engineer was bent over a mess of wires and broken screens, trying one more time to fix the communication system. "Hana, the beacon." Hana looked up, her face tired and frustrated. "What about it? Is it still sending a signal?" "Yes. It will keep sending until the power cell dies." "But no one has answered. The rescue ships are probably months away, if they are coming at all." Yuna shook her head. "That is not what I mean. Can you trace where other signals are coming from, other beacons?" Hana's eyes widened. She understood now. She worked quickly, her fingers dancing over the broken controls. The screen flickered. Lines of data scrolled past, meaningless to Yuna but clear as water to Hana. "There!" Hana pointed at a blinking dot on the map. "Another emergency beacon about 20 kilometers north, in the mountains." "Taiho. Maybe, or maybe just a piece of wreckage. There is no way to know." But Yuna knew. She felt it in her heart, the same way she felt the storm coming. Taiho was alive. He had pushed her into that escape pod. He had saved her life. And now he was out there, alone, trapped in the mountains while the worst storm in a generation was about to bury him forever. She went to Kova. The old Valari listened to her request in silence. His face did not change. His eyes did not blink. When she finished, he simply said one word. "No. He is my friend. He saved my life." "The storm will kill you. You are not built for this world. You will freeze before you reach the mountains." "I have to try." Kova's voice grew hard. "I have lost enough people this winter. I will not lose you too. You will stay with the pack. You will go south. This is not a request." Yuna looked at him for a long moment. She saw the worry behind his hard eyes. She understood that he was trying to protect her, but she also knew that some things were more important than safety. "I am sorry," she said quietly, "but I cannot leave him." She left before dawn. The cold hit her like a wall. Her breath froze in the air. Her fingers went numb within minutes. She had taken the best gear she could find, thick furs from the Valari, heat packs from the wreckage, but it was not enough. It was never going to be enough. She walked anyway. The mountains loomed ahead, growing larger with every step. The dark clouds rolled closer, swallowing the sky piece by piece. The wind screamed in her ears, throwing snow into her eyes, pushing her back. Every step was a battle. Every breath was a victory. She did not notice the small figure following her until it was too late. "Rue!" She spun around, horror flooding her chest. "What are you doing here? Go back!" The cub stood firm against the wind, its silver fur whipping wildly. "No, you saved me. Now I save you. You will die out here. Then we die together." There was no arguing with those eyes. Yuna knew that look. She had seen it before, when Rue refused to leave her side in the snow. This cub would follow her into the heart of a star if she let it. She had no choice but to keep going. They found Taiho as the first fingers of the storm reached them. He was buried under wreckage at the base of a cliff, his escape pod crushed by falling rocks. His leg was trapped, his face was pale, his lips blue. But his eyes opened when Yuna called his name, and he smiled that same smile she remembered from the ship. "Took you long enough," he whispered. "Save your strength. We will get you out." But the rocks were too heavy. Yuna pulled with all her strength, but they would not move. Her muscles burned. Her hands bled. The storm was closing in fast now, the wind howling like a living thing, the snow falling so thick she could barely see. Rue did not hesitate. The cub began to dig, its small hands moving faster than Yuna thought possible. It pushed aside snow, cleared debris, made space for Yuna to get better grip. Together, human and Valari, they worked as the world turned white around them. The rocks shifted. Taiho's leg came free. But now there was nowhere to go. The storm had arrived. They could not see the mountains. They could not see the path home. They could only see white, endless white, in every direction. Yuna pulled Taiho close with one arm and Rue with the other. She found a small hollow in the cliff face, barely big enough for the three of them, and pressed them all inside. She put herself on the outside, her body blocking the wind, her arms wrapped around the two lives that mattered most. "Yuna," Taiho's voice was weak. "You should not have come. Be quiet. Save your breath." "Yuna." Rue's small voice trembled. "I am scared." She held them tighter. "I know. I am scared too. But we are together, and that is enough." They waited for death. But death did not come. Instead, shapes emerged from the white. Big shapes, moving with purpose, fighting the wind like it was nothing. Valari scouts, sent by Kova, who could not let the foolish human die alone after all. Strong hands lifted them from the snow. Warm bodies surrounded them, blocking the worst of the storm. They moved together, a wall of fur and muscle, carrying the three survivors toward safety. One of the scouts looked at Yuna with something like wonder in his pale eyes. "You are strange creatures," he said. Yuna, half frozen and barely conscious, managed to answer. "We love stubborn." The scout did not understand, but he remembered her words. And later he would tell others what the human had said. They would remember it for a long time. Spring came slowly to the frozen world. The great storm passed after 40 days, leaving behind mountains of snow that sparkled like diamonds under the twin suns. Then the warmth returned, gentle at first, then stronger, melting the white blanket layer by layer until green things began to poke through the ground. The Valari pack returned to their mountain den, walking in a long line across the thawing land. They sang songs as they walked, old songs about survival and home, their deep voices rising to the bright sky. For the first time in many winters, they had new songs too. Songs about a human woman who healed their children. Songs about a foolish creature who walked into a storm for love. Songs that would be remembered long after everyone who heard them was gone. Yuna walked among them, her steps strong now, her body finally healed. Taiho walked beside her, his legs still weak but getting better each day. Hana was already at the den preparing the communication system that she had finally managed to repair. And Rue walked closest of all, the cub's hand never far from Yuna's own. They were almost home when Hana's voice crackled over the radio. "Yuna, you need to come quickly." The rescue ship landed 3 days later. It was a Federation cruiser, bright silver against the white and green landscape. Its engines roared as it descended, melting the snow beneath it, sending steam rising into the air. The whole pack gathered to watch, their pale eyes wide with wonder and fear. A ramp lowered. Humans in uniform walked out, their faces professional but kind. They had been searching for survivors of the Haniul for months. They had almost given up hope. "Lieutenant Yuna." The captain saluted crisply. "It is good to see you alive." Yuna stood at the edge of the crowd, her heart heavy in her chest. This was what she had been waiting for. Rescue, a way home, a return to the life she had known before the crash, before the snow, before everything changed. So why did it feel like she was being torn in two? The next days were busy. The rescue team took statements, gathered data, photographed the wreckage. They marveled at the Valari den, at the way the pack lived, at the stories they were told about what Yuna had done. Some of them looked at her with new respect in their eyes. Others looked at her like she was a stranger they did not quite understand. Kova came to her on the last night. They sat together outside the den, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. The old Valari was quiet for a long time, his scarred face thoughtful. When he finally spoke, his voice was different than before, softer, warmer. "When you first came here," he said, "I thought you were like all the others, weak, Selfish. A creature that takes without giving. I was wrong. Yuna looked at him. You were trying to protect your people. Yes, but protection means nothing if it closes your eyes to truth. He paused, gathering his words carefully. You have shown us something we had forgotten. That strength is not only in the body, that there is power in kindness, in stories, in the strange human word you call love. He reached into his fur and pulled out a small object. It was a stone, smooth and pale, carved with symbols Yuna did not recognize. This is a pack mark, given only to family. I would like you to have it. Yuna's eyes filled with tears. She took the stone with trembling hands. Thank you. I do not have words for what this means. You do not need words. You have already spoken, with your actions, with your heart. The old Valari stood and walked away, but at the entrance of the den he stopped and looked back. The Valari wish to open formal contact with your people. We have judged humanity and found you worthy. A small smile crossed his scarred face. Mostly because of you. Do not make us regret it. The morning of departure came too soon. Yuna packed her few belongings. She put on her uniform, the same one she had worn on the Hanul, cleaned and mended by Valari hands. She looked at herself in a piece of polished metal and barely recognized the woman who looked back. That woman had been through something. That woman had changed. Rue was waiting outside. The cub stood alone, away from the others, its silver fur catching the morning light. Its eyes were dry, but Yuna could see the pain behind them. The terrible, crushing pain of someone about to lose everything again. She knelt down so they were face to face. I have to go, she said gently. My people need me. There are things I must do. Rue nodded slowly. I know. But I want you to understand something. She reached out and took the cub's small hand. This is not goodbye. Not really. Humans have this thing we do. When we love someone, we do not let distance stop us. We find ways to come back. Always. Promise? I promise. On every star in the sky. On every story I ever told you. I will come back. She pressed something into Rue's hand. It was a small data pad, one of the few things that survived the crash. On it were recordings. Her voice, telling all the stories she had shared around the fire. The rabbit on the moon. The tiger and the persimmon. The woodcutter and the fairy. All of them saved forever. When you miss me, she said, listen to these. And remember that somewhere out there, I am thinking of you too. Rue clutched the datapad like it was the most precious thing in the universe, because it was. The shuttle lifted off slowly, rising through the cold air toward the stars. Yuna pressed her hand against the window, looking down at the white and green world that had almost killed her, and then saved her in ways she never expected. She could see a small figure on the ridge, watching the ship rise. Silver fur bright against the snow. One hand raised in farewell. In her other hand, she held the packmark Kova had given her. She turned it over and over, feeling its weight, its meaning, its promise. Tejo sat beside her, his leg healing, his eyes soft with understanding. You are coming back, are you not? Yuna smiled through her tears. As soon as I can, nothing in the universe could stop me. Below, on the ridge, Rue watched until the ship was just a spark among the stars. Then the cub looked down at the datapad, pressed the play button, and listened to Yuna's voice fill the morning air. Long ago, in a land far away, there lived a rabbit who dreamed of touching the moon. The cub smiled. It hurt, but it was still a smile. Because Rue understood now. Humans were strange creatures, weak and soft and short-lived. They broke easily. They felt too much. They cried at stories that were not even real, but they also came back. Always, they came back. And for a small orphan who had spent so long waiting for someone to return, That was the greatest gift of all. Far above, the ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying Yuna toward home. But home was a funny word now. It meant more than it used to. It meant Earth and Korea and her mother's cooking. It meant the stars and the service and the endless black between worlds. And it meant a frozen planet with 2 suns, where a pack of proud aliens had taught her what family really meant, where a small cub with silver fur had saved her life with nothing but warmth and hope. She would go back, she had promised, and humans always kept their promises. At least the best ones did.